Welcome to the Sacramentalists, a podcast where the ancient Christian faith is brought to bear on issues prevalent in modern culture. We're your hosts. I'm Father Creighton McElveen.
And I'm Father Hayden Butler.
Today we are recording our episode without Father Wes. Father Wes has had a tough week, so keep him in your prayers. Today, though, on our episode, we are joined by Father Matt Harlow. Father Matt is the Canon to the Ordinary in the Diocese of the Eastern United States, Anglican Province of America, and he is the rector of Christ the Redeemer in Fort Valley, Georgia. He was also at St. Barnabas, where I got to know him very well. And in this episode, we're going to discuss a very interesting topic. We're going to discuss exorcisms. Specifically, Father is going to tell us about an experience in his own parish. Father, thanks for joining us.
Sure, thank you for having me.
We're excited about jumping into this conversation. I think it's definitely going to be interesting, and I know when we posted on the Discord that we were going to be having you on to talk about this topic, there was definitely some interest there. So I think the best place to start is just telling us what happened at your parish.
Sure. Well, first off, let me describe what the parish looks like. We are 7 acres, and it was an old pecan. We had a lot of pecan trees, an old pecan farm. We had a farmhouse and a barn, and it's about 1 acre wide and 7 acres deep. So kind of think of, a football field wide, and it goes back 7 acres. We have since built a church, and I'm in the church right now. In the church, the parking lot and the parish hall are kind of in the first third. They're about the first 2 acres. And then we've got the field and a barn, and we use the barn as a thrift shop. And in the field, we've got, playground equipment and that kind of thing. It's about another 2 acres. And that's behind the parish hall. And then behind that, we have a fenced area. We've got a gate that's behind the barn, and we've got the back third, which is basically woods and some field that's overgrown. So that's kind of the layout of this parish. And I've been here since 2015. And when I first got here, of course, and Father Creighton and I were talking about some of the challenges of first arriving at a parish. And one of the interesting things I found when I first got here was a pewter ciborium. And I've since installed a tabernacle, but all we had was an aumbrey at the time. And in the aumbrey was this pewter ciborium. And I think the way that my predecessor used it was kind of as a bread box, because when I first saw the altar guild doing their work, and I think I was just a guest at this point, they would put new fresh hosts from the sacristy into this, and then put it in the aumbrey. And so I just gather it's not how I learned how to do that, but probably they were just using it as a bread box. And so what I did was I took it out of circulation. I cleansed it. I actually consumed everything that was in it. I wasn't sure if it was consecrated or not. So I consumed all the hosts that were in it, and then took it out of circulation. Cleaned it in the sacristy, and I put it in my office. And it was in my office for over 8 years. It had moved. I'd moved it a couple of times. At one point, it was in my desk. Another point, it was in the closet. And it's just one of those things. You have a ciborium. What am I going to do with it? I don't really, I've brought my own ciborium. I have my own chalice and paten. this one, you know, pewter wasn't particularly attractive, and I just didn't know anything about it. So, and I wanted to, always knew that I wanted to bury it at some point, but you know how things go. You just, one thing leads to another, and 8 years later, you still have a ciborium in your office. And so that is kind of the background on the ciborium. Unknown provenance. I don't know, you know, where it came from. I don't know exactly what it was used for. My suspicion was it was used as a bread box. But like I said, I consumed all the hosts and went ahead and, you know, properly cleaned it and took it out of circulation. So fast forward 8 years, and we're having a parish work day. And this is August 26th of 2023, having a parish-wide work day. And we have some old Paschal candles in the sacristy. And they asked me what to do with it. I said, well, let's just go bury them out back. And then the light bulb went off. Oh, hey, I've had a ciborium in my office for you know, 8 years that I've wanted to bury here on the parish grounds. Let's do that. So there was a group of men, four of us all together. I gathered them. They were just standing around looking like they needed something to do type thing. You know how work days go. And so grab a shovel and follow me. We're going to bury these things. And so that's what we did. And we actually went behind the barn to that back third of the parish, back where the woods are and the overgrown field. You have to actually unlock a gate to get through there. And so I took them back there, and several of the men with shovels dug a hole for the Paschal candles from previous years, the little stumpy Paschal candles that were wonderful, but you know, we needed to do something with them. And the ciborium, and we actually buried them in two different holes. The men with the shovels dug a wide hole for the Paschal candles, and then we had actually my assisting priest had a post hole digger, and he dug a hole with that because that actually fit pretty well for the ciborium. And so he used that, and we buried the ciborium about 10 feet away from where we buried the Paschal candles. So that was August 26th, a Saturday, and didn't think anything else of it. And I did take pictures of that because I, you know, amongst the many hats, of course, I'm the editor of our parish newsletter, and I like getting pictures of everything that we're doing around the parish on workday. And so I had a handful of you know, pictures from that day, and I took pictures of us burying those items. Didn't think about it again. Let's fast forward to a month later to September 26th, and this was a Tuesday morning. And our schedule here, our typical schedule around the parish is Tuesday morning, we have a 9 a.m. morning prayer, and then we have a Bible study. So I get here about 8 before anyone else arrives at the parish. And so I got here about 8, and I come into the parish first, I put my cassock on, then I go to the parish hall, and that's my routine. So, and I take my books and everything and get all set up for Bible study. I come in, I get my cassock on, and I go outside, and I hear what sounds like someone whistling at me. The whistle, I'm not a good whistler, but the whistle is the type that if you're trying to get somebody's attention or get someone to come over here, you know, just a pretty basic, sorry about that. Sorry about my whistling skills. Never a great whistler, but I heard that, right? And if you hear that, I mean, that's pretty distinctive. That's someone trying to get your attention. And so, you know, okay, you know, someone around here. And it kept occurring. and it seemed to be changing location. Like I couldn't pinpoint it, where it was coming from. And so that was odd. And I spent probably about 5 minutes walking around because I was sure that wasn't, it didn't sound like, I mean, a mockingbird can do whatever it wants, but it didn't sound, I'd never heard a mockingbird do that and then, move around and whatnot. So I was outside, I was between the church and our parish hall, and that's about a 30-foot span. And, just kind of going back and forth, trying to figure out, someone whistling at me. I don't think anybody's around here. But we have, and I've been here about 9 years, and we're right on Highway 41. If you're an Allman Brothers fan, you'd recognize that. We're right on Highway 41. And so we have a lot of transients. We do have a lot of people that, are riding a bike down to Florida or leaving Florida and, just going up and down the highway. And I have seen evidence before of people who've camped out. I've, found litter. I found, bars of soap and an old towel next to a hose. We have exterior outlets, which is popular because they can recharge their phones while they're on their journey. So it's not something I've seen a lot of, but probably half a dozen over the last 8-9 years of evidence of someone had been probably stayed the night on our ground, 7 acres off of Highway 41, and so I thought when I was looking around that that's a possibility, that there's somebody, who had stayed overnight, and might be in distress or something. Although I didn't think it sounded like a distress call. It sounded like trying to get my attention, and it varied in pitch, but the essential sound was, a call to get my attention. And I certainly thought it was odd. And I've never spent 5 minutes walking around my parish trying to find somebody because I'm hearing, whistling to get my attention. But the work of the parish priest must go on. I had morning prayer in a half an hour, and I had Bible study after that. So after I felt like I had done all I could to trace down the source of that whistling, I went into the parish hall, got set up, went about the rest of my day. No other occurrences, nothing else odd happening. So that's the Tuesday, the 26th, I believe. The next day, Wednesday, the 27th, our parish schedule is we have an evening mass at 6 p.m. So I usually come in after lunch. And so this is the 27th, Wednesday, and I do that. I come in about 1, and I'm working in my office, just doing everything, bulletins or whatnot. And again, I hadn't really much thought about the whistling episode, but I look out my back window so I can see from my window in the parish, my back window in the parish hall, I can see that someone's at the barn, and I recognize him, my old junior warden, and he and his wife, work in the thrift shop in there, and so it's not uncommon. I saw that they were back there, knew they're doing something for the thrift shop, getting it ready. It's open on Fridays and Saturdays, and so I saw them. I wanted to take a break, from bulletins, or and thought I'd go back there and just say hi, and so I did, and I saw my old junior warden, and when I saw him, it just kind of popped in my mind, because he and I had before seen evidence of transients around the parish ground, and so when I saw him, I kind of thought, oh yeah, yesterday that was so odd. And so I asked him, I said, did you see any evidence around the parish of someone having stayed here and camped out here, and knowing that he would know essentially what I was talking about because we've seen that kind of evidence before. And he said, "No, but you know that thing you buried?" And I said, it took me a second. "You know that thing you buried out back?" And I said, "You mean the ciborium? It looks kind of like the chalice, ciborium." He said, "Yeah." He said, that got dug up and thrown on the ground. And I said, and I immediately actually in my mind kind of connected it to the day before. I thought that's not right. Because, just really quickly, kind of going through all of the possibilities, none of the possibilities made a lot of sense to me of how that could have occurred. So I said, well, I want to go back there and look and see, what this is. And he told me that it had happened because he'd been back there on Sunday afternoon and hadn't seen it at least. And if you go through the gate, it was fairly obvious if you go through the gate. So he didn't see it on Sunday, but he did, he had seen it earlier on Wednesday. So sometime between Sunday and Wednesday, this had occurred. And so I open the gate, I go through and I look at the hole and I look at where the ciborium is. And then I get down on my hands and knees and the hole is probably 24 inches deep, 36 inches deep, but I'm looking to see if there's any evidence of how this hole was dug. Either some sort of claw marks, like a dog would leave, or the straight edged cutting of a shovel or a spade or something like that. And I don't see either one. And the other odd thing is I don't see any residual dirt. It's just a hole. There's no loose dirt. So, if a dog does it, he kicks it up behind him and you'll have a little pile of loose dirt. Or even if you're using a shovel, you're going to have, loose dirt somewhere. But I couldn't tell how that hole was made. And I go to the ciborium and I start taking pictures because I'm immediately concerned. And the ciborium has been wrenched. It's pewter, it's soft. It wouldn't take a lot of pressure, but it is in fact wrenched and bent at an odd angle. One of the things I looked at immediately when I picked up the ciborium was if the lid was still intact. And interestingly enough, a crucifix on it had been peeled back, but was still on. But the lid was closed, and no evidence of it being opened and reclosed. It was sealed and because I had to actually, get, how you kind of get your fingernails underneath and to pop it open. And I was able to do that, but it took some force. So I assumed that the lid had not been opened. So what I do is I take the ciborium back to my office and I think I text the bishop that I want to talk to him this evening after Mass because I've got a 6 o'clock Mass, and so I leave the ciborium now that's been exhumed in my office, and so what I do is after Mass I go home, I talk to the bishop, and the bishops we talk through the provenance of that item, and I say, I just don't know. And then we start talking, interestingly, about the consecration of this ground. And I say, I don't know, if we have had any sort of a a blessing or, beating of the bounds back there, back past that gate. We don't use that. We own that property, but we don't use it for anything. I'd love to at some point, expand to back there, but we're just not there yet. And so we talk through those things, and we agree that that this could be something infernal, that this could be some sort of demonic activity, either associated with the ciborium itself. But as I told the bishop, and I never felt anything with that, and it was in my office for 8 years. I never felt that there was anything attached to that item, and I've been in close proximity with it for a long time, or perhaps with this property, and maybe that property back there, that there was something attached to that. So I actually, after the bishop, and I asked the bishop if I could speak with a deacon who I knew has a lot of experience with this and has been experienced in a deliverance ministry. And so I asked the bishop for permission, a mutual friend of ours, if I could speak with that deacon about this. And the bishop thought that was a good idea. And so when I got off the phone with the bishop, this is still Wednesday night, the day that I found the ciborium, I text some of those pictures to the deacon, and he called me immediately, without hardly any context or anything, just from looking at the pictures of what had occurred. And he thought that this was demonic activity, possibly, and it's certainly how I felt, because I couldn't I couldn't rationalize how that ciborium was exhumed. I don't know of an animal in Middle Georgia that's attracted to pewter. There was no smells about it that would have had meat or something. I mean, it had been out of circulation for 8 years, and it had been properly cleansed, and at most it ever held was host. So there's nothing to the smell that an animal would know exactly where to dig and to pull this up. And the location of it, as far as like having somebody, I've never seen the whole, sometimes we see homeless people around here. I've never seen anyone way back there. It's always up around here where all the lights are, the water is, the electricity. There's nothing back there but woods. And so I'd never seen anybody back there, and no one would know where to dig. I actually went and looked at where we had buried the Paschal candles just to see. That area had been completely undisturbed, and it was hard to tell, maybe not impossible to tell if you knew exactly where to look, because it was a month later, right? So that area had been dug up, but it was pretty difficult to tell, even though I knew where the Paschal candles were dug. So if a person were to do it, they would have had to have known where that was. And I mean, nobody in my parish even has the time to do that, or the desire, or especially the handful of people that had knowledge of where that was. That just doesn't make any sense. So I spoke with the bishop, I spoke with this deacon, and it was agreed that an exorcism around the parish grounds would be appropriate, using the Leonine minor exorcism. And I felt good about that. And it's one of those things. It's a great prayer. It's a wonderful prayer. And if there is something of a demonic activity, it's great to pray this exorcism around the grounds of the parish. And even if it's not, there's nothing wrong with walking around your parish and praying. And so it's kind of win-win. So that was Wednesday night. That was the plan of action. My first thought was to wait till the weekend. It's going to be hard to get anyone here to help me with an exorcism, to do these prayers, to do everything that we wanted to do with incense and holy water and these things. I didn't want to, drag people out, on a Thursday night. All of my parishioners work and everything. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. I'm going to try to see if people are available, maybe Saturday morning, and we'll do this. We'll walk around the parish. We'll say our prayers, and we'll have a little, beating of the bounds type thing, a procession with prayer and incense. But I didn't really want to like super inconvenience anybody. So I Thursday morning I get here to the parish, and with that in mind, I'm going to start this process, start reaching out to people and telling them, asking them if they could come and participate. I wanted my assisting priest, I wanted my deacon, and I wanted my senior warden especially. Well, he's a friend, but he is an outdoorsman, and I really wanted him to take a look at the hole because he hunts animals with bow and arrows, and he goes out and he stalks them. So he's a real outdoorsman. I'm not. I mean, that hole didn't look like anything I had seen before, but I wanted my senior warden to take a look at it too. So get here Thursday morning, same routine. I go into the sacristy, put my cassock on. I'm the only person here at the parish. And then I head across the sidewalk to the parish hall where my office is. I start hearing the sound of wood cracking, kind of like when, timber, when you hear a tree fall or crack in the middle, or, a big branch. I start hearing these wood sounds from that exact area, from behind the thrift shop. There, you've got the gate, and then you've got kind of the woods. And from there, I start hearing that, and, okay, that's odd. And so I actually go and start walking in that direction, and it starts getting really loud, and to the point that the noises weren't corresponding to what I was visually seeing. It sounded like the trees right in front of me, and in fact, it sounded to me like the beams in the barn were busting, and that's kind of orally what I was hearing, but visually I wasn't seeing anything. And I, in my spirit, I felt that was antagonistic. I felt this is purposeful, and I don't want to wait till this weekend. I want to see if these men are available, and I want to do this exorcism now, because I feel like this is challenging and menacing. And so I do. I get on the phone, and I mean, we've never done anything like this, and so I kind of self-consciously, I suppose, preface each phone call. Okay, you might think this is crazy, but I want to do an exorcism tonight, and this is why. And to a man, all of them said yes. Let's do this. Let's do this. And so what had been recommended by the bishop and the deacon was to do this exorcism first, to use incense, to use holy water, blessed salt, to go through go through the church, every room in the church, parish hall, thrift shop, first, praying these prayers in procession, and then to go along the boundaries of the parish outside and to do say these prayers while processing, and with the crucifix, with a thurible, and with an aspergillium and a basin for holy water. And so that's what the four of us did. And we also had, well, I should go back and say that the ciborium was in my office that night, Wednesday night to Thursday. I did bring it back into the church Thursday morning after experiencing these odd sounds outside, and the bishop wanted me to use holy oil to chrismate it and to have that kind of he gave me permission to reconsecrate it, basically. And so I did that. I put a veil over it and left it in our chapel. And I went to the local Roman parish. They have a bookstore, and I got 16 St. Benedict medals from them, and I brought them back. And so now, I guess at this point, and I'd already called the men, who all agreed to come later on that evening at 5:30. And so now we're probably about lunchtime, about noon, 1, and I'm here at the parish again by myself, and I start preparing for the exorcism by blessing and exorcising the water and the salt. So we have a big container of water and some blessed salt. So I begin using the priest manual and going through all of that, doing all of that in the chapel, and blessing the medals, the Saint Benedict medals, that we're going to use after the exorcism. And so I'm doing all this in my chapel, and I do here at the doors of the parish. I'm here in the church, and actually I'm facing my chapel right now. It's and I'm in here, and the doors of the church start rattling, like someone's seeing if they can get in to the church. And I'm the only one here, and I can, even though it's stained glass by shadows and whatnot, I can usually tell when someone has driven and parked in the parking lot. I see the shadows through the stained glass windows, and I was pretty sure that nobody was here and nobody had driven up, and I thought this was a part of what is going on. Is we're preparing for this exorcism, and the doors of the parish are rattling, and I just felt like it was a purposeful distraction. And so I kept going about my business of preparing for the exorcism. The men showed up, and we met in the chapel. I had everything prepared. We did the Confiteor together with absolution, and my assisting priest gave me absolution, and we set out, and we went through the buildings. We went through the parish grounds with this Leo the 13th rite of minor exorcism. After that, we went to the corners of each building, into the corners of the parish grounds themselves, and we prayed, and we buried the blessed medals of Saint Benedict throughout the parish. Then we dug a deeper hole in a more secure place around the parish, and we reburied the ciborium. And that was the eve of Michaelmas. And one of the really interesting things about this, and of course the Michaelmas, epistle begins, there's war in heaven, and Michael and his archangel fought against the dragon and his angel, and the dragon prevailed not. As I heard from other priests, that they had seen an uptick, leading up to Michaelmas of maybe spiritual activity. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but it certainly wasn't lost on me that we had the exorcism on Michaelmas Eve, and from that moment on, it was peaceful. One really interesting witness and testimony. I told you the thrift shop is open on Fridays and Saturdays, and they were open on Michaelmas on that Friday, and a woman came in, and I wasn't back there. I was in my office, but one of the ladies a parishioner who works back there, told me about this, and she wasn't aware of the exorcism. I didn't, it wasn't something I broadcast or anything, and it happened pretty quickly, from a Tuesday to a Thursday. But she came and told me that my parishioner, who was working in the barn, that a lady had come in that she hadn't seen before, and the lady had kind of looked around the parish grounds, and it was a beautiful day, that Michaelmas, here in Middle Georgia, and the woman commented that it's peaceful around here now, and so my parishioner, it's a nice compliment, told me, and I just thought that was an interesting phrasing. All things that had been occurring, I could see, saying, "It's a nice day, isn't it?" Or, "Sure is a blue sky this morning." But making an observation, it was just, another one of those kind of odd things of that she would just feel the peace there the very next day. So that's kind of that's what happened, and again, yeah. So since then, that was Michaelmas 2023. Since then, none of those incidents, that occurred, have been there. And I'll admit, I mean, I've been pretty hypersensitive at times, especially when I'm by myself on the parish and it's nighttime. Maybe I'm, closing up and it's after the evening mass or something. I'm the only one here. I never felt scared, but I did feel, I don't know, antagonized, challenged. And I have been hypersensitive, like to sounds, what is this? What is this? And I haven't heard, anything that would make me, that was the same pattern, same, kind of purposefulness, I guess, of what happened during that time. So I did write a report for the bishop. I wanted it to be on the diocesan file. I mean, after speaking with him, because I think it's very possible that the other priests might encounter this, might encounter something similar. So I wanted to at least document, while it was fresh in my mind, what occurred and what we did and what the outcome was. And so it could be a resource for others. And so I did document everything, sent in, all the pictures that I had taken for that. So in the final analysis, I tried to, it's one of those interesting things. Everything that occurred could have a perfectly natural, not supernatural, but perfectly natural explanation. You could say something, dog or, dug that up. It certainly didn't look like it. It certainly doesn't make sense that a dog would dig that up, drag it 10 yards away, wrench it, and and leave it there. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's possible. The sounds, the whistling, maybe a escaped, parrot or something, or mockingbird or something, but it didn't. I don't think so. And again, with the crashing sounds in the woods, and the breaking of beam sounds. When you're in an area with buildings and a forest, you can get echoes. You can hear things that are occurring, a long distance away. So you certainly could, see these things, but for all of them to happen, bam, 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 that I'd never experienced around my parish at all, and I've been here, most days over the last 9 years, but over those 3 days to experience things that I'd never experienced before was interesting. So I what I believe happened, there's certainly different takes on it that would be possible. I believe that back portion of our property, which was fenced off, never used for anything with the church, had not been blessed or consecrated prior to me. And I believe that when we buried that ciborium, and I asked the bishop, did I do something wrong here? I believe when we buried the ciborium back there, that something noticed that this is a holy item. Again, I didn't know much about the provenance before, but I treated it as if it had been a consecrated ciborium, and my intention was to bury it on consecrated ground. But and it's interesting. You go back and you read, scripture, especially I think of, Job 1, Satan, comes up into the heavenly courts, and, what have you been doing? Well, I've just been going to and fro on the earth. And so, I certainly believe in, demonic entities and these spiritual powers. And I think one of them came across this, and it was an opportunity, kind of a crime of opportunity that we don't know the spiritual realm. You see this in scripture, and you see this in Tobit, you see it in Daniel, you see it in Job. There's rules to the spiritual realm. We don't know them. We know some of them. We know a part of them. And of course, the church has been given the sacraments and the sacramentals and these tools and these prayers, but we don't know, the ins and outs of the rules. But there's rules in the spiritual realm. And I think that, for whatever reason, this ciborium, attracted something, a demonic entity, and it was exhumed, and then it kind of in a mocking fashion, it was desecrated, and then I was kind of antagonized as the priest of the parish. That's how I felt about it. I told my wife about it Wednesday night, when I talked to the bishop and I spoke with the deacon, and I was telling her at that point, it was just the day before. I was telling her, about the whistling, and I hadn't gotten to Thursday yet, where I heard, the crashing and all of this, and the shaking of the parish doors. But so far, all I'd seen is the ciborium exhumed and the whistling. I was telling, I couldn't put my finger on it. She did the best job. I said it was coming from different angles, and I was walking around and kind of chasing my tail. But I said it seemed like there was an intelligence behind it, and it seemed like it was trying to get my attention. And she said, she put it into better words than I did. She said it was like someone was saying, I can see you, but you can't see me. And I said, that's how I felt that morning, when I had, when I was walking around my parish going, why, who's whistling at me? So uh, I think, in hindsight, I think, that bearing that ciborium, in that area, that area perhaps had not been properly blessed. Even though, according to the county, it's our property, perhaps it hadn't been blessed. I just don't know. But having, done the exorcism, it took about an hour and a half, 2 hours to walk the entire, all of the buildings, to walk the parish grounds, to to walk, then after the exorcism, to bury these blessed medals of Saint Benedict, and to say prayers along the boundaries and borders of our parish, going all the way back, all 7 acres. We went, we tromped through the woods. Having done that and then reburied the ciborium, it's been peaceful. Just like our visitor on Friday, on Michaelmas, said, it's peaceful here now. And I agree. It's been peaceful here now since then. So that I think, to the best of my memory, which it isn't what it used to be, is what occurred. So I hope that covered it. I hope that brought everybody up to speed.
No, I think it did. It's a fascinating situation. I mean, one of the things I always like to point out is there's no such thing as neutral ground. And in the case of your parish, I mean, we could think of that literally, right? There's literally no neutral ground here. That what the church does is consecrate and set aside, um, the kingdom of heaven in the world, and the enemy does not want that to happen. And I think, we can see this, like, one of the things from TV and movies, we tend to associate sort of demonic activity with that very overt possession that we see in, say, like The Exorcist, or movies like that. That's not the only thing that happens, right? There's possession, there's oppression, there's infestation. You can have a demonic fixation or an obsession that can lead you to greater engagement with those spiritual entities. Demons can be associated with places and things, and we encounter these sorts of realities in the world, and maybe in the Western world we're a little bit more just generally desensitized, and so we kind of don't see how significant the spiritual world is around us. But I think the idea that you went out to properly sort of retire a consecrated item, which is what we do with holy things. They don't go back into sort of temporal or you know mundane service after they have been used in the church. And yeah, I think you doing that, something responded and wanted to push back against the fact that the church is this refuge, and this place where holiness is supposed to kind of radiate from, which is why we set aside the church and consecrate it. It's hallowed ground. It's an embassy of heaven, kind of here and now. So it's interesting. It's an interesting story.
And just to go back, I talked about my senior warden. I did have, the other three men. I wanted them all to get down and look at that hole, and to a man, and they're all very, hunter. We're all from the South here, hunters and everything. To a man, they couldn't explain how that hole was made, or what had made it, and had ever seen a hole quite, there was just no residual dirt, no markings one way or the other, a man or beast. They agreed. So it wasn't just, Father Matt, who doesn't, spend a whole lot of time outdoors.
Another thing that stood out as I was hearing your story, Father Matt, is just the kind of the ordering of things and the situating, your process, your method really, I think, is exemplary when it comes to this. First of all, I think there's a tendency to either, to say, oh, well, those things don't really happen anymore. Those things aren't really, those categories of the spiritual world don't really obtain. But then the opposite is to sensationalize and to, say like, oh, well, there's something hiding around every corner, every creak in the building is actually this thing. And it's what I observed in your account is a remarkably measured response to this, that even in the course of a decisive action and conducting an exorcism, still left room. Like you just said, I had every man to a man check out the hole to see if there was, to see what they thought about this, and subjecting it to second opinion, subjecting this to natural explanation, while not at the same time, doing so in order to deny the existence of the possibility that this was what was happening. The other dimension of that stood out in your story was, something that I think, doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to spiritual warfare or exorcism, which is, the authority of your bishop under which you placed yourself. And that's a significant thing. You got on the phone with your bishop right away and asked his permission and set yourself under his authority, and, took his direction. And you didn't take this upon your shoulders as an independent agent. Our ministries as priests, they're united to the ministries of our bishop, and we're subject to them, and we are submitted to them in that way. And I think that there's it's a case study in making decisions of a grave matter as a parish priest, is letting the charism of our bishop's consecrations, illuminate us and to direct us in all godly matters, and to be obedient to them in that. And then to seek out advice from someone who has experience in this. It's not often how I've seen in the past, people treat the spiritual realm. Sometimes it's just, I went to a Bible college where at the moment I was there was a real fixation on the demonic. And it was too often that, a sophomore undergraduate would just be like, well, let's get some buddies from our dorm together and go do an exorcism on someone. And it's like, this is a really serious thing. If we confess that these things are real, then we have to treat them as real and grave things, and they demand that kind of serious treatment and that methodical treatment. And that stood out, and I find it commendable. So I think that our listeners could probably meditate on that, and consider that they participate in this economy of grace, and in their place in the church, and that those are real relations that come to bear when it comes to prudential decision making like this. So I appreciated that about your story.
Well, thank you. Well, you're exactly right, as far as, it can be a preoccupation. I've, in my ministry as a priest, you come, of course, you come across people who, have, concerns, my house haunted, or this or that. And some are, serious concerns. We do have a chain of command, and just like we were saying, there's rules to the spiritual world that we're not 100% aware of. The church has tools, and we have the sacraments and sacramentals, and we have, of course, yes, the bishop, the diocesan bishop is, the exorcist of his diocese, and he can delegate that. He can have a diocesan, exorcist, but he is the supreme exorcist of his own diocese. Um, I I wanted to, I didn't want to sensationalize this. I never, made a. If anyone in my parish asked, or if it, would come up naturally, we'd talk about it. But it's nothing that I, wanted to, get people, worked up or excited about. That is one of the things I think about a spiritual warfare, if you will, that I think the demonic wants to distract. The ministry of a parish priest is to visit the sick and to care for, the cure of souls of your parishioners, and that involves going to the hospital, that involves going to their homes, that involves studying scripture, that involves, everything that a parish priest involves. And I think the demonic sometimes would, want to distract you, and let's go off on this fanciful, and just chase your tail. And so I've impressed. I've had, men who wanted to look into holy orders, to perhaps, become an aspirant or a postulant, but have something of a preoccupation with this. And it's like, it's not, as Father Creighton was saying, the parish priest, it's not the movies. We're not, going and Linda Blair and pea soup and all of this. It is going to the hospital and visiting the, your 80-year-old parishioner who just had a hip replacement. It is, bulletins, newsletters. It's those mundane things, but that's the where we're called. And it's not, I shouldn't undersell it. It's just not, the sensationalistic, things. It's the trench work of the priest, which is, to care for your parishioners. And if in the care of your parishioners you have to, do an exorcism or something like that, again, the church has, the means and the tools to do that. But yes, let's not get distracted from the daily, ministry that we're called to.
It seems like in that too, there's, an analogy for the parishioner as well. Sometimes I get asked in parish ministry, okay, how do I prevent, oppression or fixation or possession from happening? And generally, the answer is, be a proficient ordinary Christian, be regular in your receiving of the sacrament, be regular in confession, be regular in prayer, be, self-examining, live a proficient Christian life. And that is, our baptisms is really that exorcism of our lives, and living out of that baptismal grace in an ordinary way is that is the that is the best, and that covers most of the stuff, right? And but I think you're in your description of the priesthood, it's similar. It's our ministry is what it is, and then Christian vocation is what it is. And when we're in that, that's the place where life is, and that's the place where the service of our Lord who gives us security and freedom is. And that's a good word for all of us.
Well, Father, thanks so much for joining us. This was a really interesting discussion, I think. But this also leads us, maybe on a lighter note, I guess, than parish exorcism. This kind of takes us to our favorite section, which is what we're into. Um, Father Matt, what have you been into? It could be anything, a board game, movie, TV show, doing something with your family, hiking, whatever. What are you into?
Let's see. Um, Boy, I'd like to think of just something really super holy. Uh, uh, I have been in the evenings. I've been binging uh, Reacher on Amazon. That's uh, uh, kind of interesting. He takes care of business, I guess, against the bad guys, and so that's interesting. And I've been looking to see, now that we're Septuagesima, uh, looking to see what I want to uh, recommend to others and for myself for holy reading. And so I've been looking at Dorothy Karen, The Living Touch, and I'll commend that to people. Again, the tools of the church, the sacrament that healed her. And so I've got that on my desk right now. Just reread it for the first time in a few years. Just a little book. And so that's what I'm into.
Nothing wrong with the TV show here or there. I think half the time when we say what we're into, it typically is something very like mundane and ordinary. Father Hayden, what are you into?
Yeah, I'll follow Father Matt's template there and say first that I've been rewatching the old show from the mid-aughts, House, which is Hugh Laurie. I never really watched the entire series straight through and had only seen sporadic episodes, but watching it's funny to kind of look back at the mid-aughts, and particularly this show has a recurring visit to religious figures, religious characters that come on the show, and generally they're props for Hugh Laurie's very skeptical character to just smash to pieces. I do find it interesting to think back to that era and to the anxiety around rationalism and scientism that I heard in the Christian sphere, and it made me sort of long for those days because it seems like what we're kind of confronting in a cultural moment right now is a lot of the opposite of that. It's not really like the questions of science and faith so much as it's like the faith versus a kind of recursive inward experience, and it's difficult to pin down. And I just thought about like, oh wow, this feels dated now, even though it's only been about 15 years since it came out, and this kind of conflict on display kind of rang with a little bit of a dated vibe. It's been fun. It's well scripted, and Hugh Laurie's a great actor, so it was fun. It's been fun to be in that. And then, like Father Matt, I've been thinking about, kind of what to focus on during Lent and to recommend. And I've been revisiting Bishop Jeremy Taylor's writings lately, and that's been a real wonderful journey. The one that I've been rereading through in this last couple of weeks has been Holy Dying, and I think I might recommend that one to a few people for Lent this year. But it's just a beautiful meditation on the Christian liturgy of dying, and what how to prepare for a good death in Christ. So those are some things on my plate.
I'll stick with the theme. So TV show and then a book. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but Margaret Ann and I are watching the newest season of All Creatures Great and Small. I have a really deep love and sort of nostalgia for the older version of All Creatures. And also the books and things. My mother and I both really love those stories, and so we connect with them, and I grew up watching them. So when the new season or the new series came out, I was really excited, and it has not disappointed. It is fantastic start to finish. Um, it's like a fun, funny, wholesome sort of experience. But it also deals with some really interesting questions and some really heavy social, cultural, personal issues. And I think they do it in a really interesting way, sort of like Call the Midwife, sort of engages with something very heavy, but it's also very positive and kind of shows like that have a soft spot in my heart. So been watching that and enjoying it a lot. And then it's sort of a similar way. I wasn't doing it specifically for the purpose of figuring out like Lenten reading or anything, but it's kind of turned into that. I regularly go back to Imitation of Christ. It's sort of like a yearly read for me. Um, so Thomas Kempis's Imitation of Christ. And this year I was sort of reading through it and decided that I wanted to go back and read St. Francis de Sales' Introduction to the Devout Life, which I haven't picked up since maybe my first year in seminary. Um, one of my favorite books. It's really, really good, but I just haven't picked it up in a while. And so picked that back up. And I think that is now going to become my sort of Lenten book. So I'm taking it little pieces at a time because I know my impulse is to just like sit down and try to blast through the whole thing and finish it. And I'm like, no, I need to kind of take this in small mouthfuls rather than sort of gorging myself on it. But yeah, so that's kind of that's what we've been up to, and we're sort of patiently waiting the arrival of little baby McElveen to the fold, which could be any day now. So I think in some ways that's what's occupying most of my thought right now is getting ready for that and kind of how things are going to change. But
If you think it's occupying you now, just wait. It's,
oh, like a freight train, right?
this is the calm before the storm.
Kidding.
But a blessing, of course.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you what, we timed it perfectly by, Ash Wednesday and the beginning of Lent being like the due date. So here you go for Easter. Here's a baby. Didn't really think about that one.
well, congratulations in advance.
Yep.
You're in my prayers. That's wonderful. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. We're excited. Well, listeners, thank you for listening and watching our episodes. If you would like to follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you can. And subscribe on YouTube. We're very close to 1,000 subscribers there. So I think we're only 150 some odd away. So if you're interested, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave us a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to join our Discord or get some access to some additional content like during the summers and things, you can join the Communion of Patreon Saints for just $5 a month. Father Matt, will you give us a blessing to close?
Yes, the Lord be with you.
And with thy spirit.
Let us pray. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace, both now and evermore. Amen.
Amen.